Hi, Substack. It's me, Amelia. I'm so excited to be doing my first ever solo ep. Me and Evan are so excited to start doing these kind of like virtual, like more lo fi episodes that it's just like us getting into stuff. We do have an episode about Famesick that it's me and Evan talking that comes out next Tuesday. But that's a more general discussion. And then we mainly just touch on like the girls' specific parts. I didn't read like a paper copy. I like listened to it. So it was a lot of like me walking through the streets of New York, like while Lena tells me about the worst days of her life. So yeah, I did cry a couple times, no problem. It was just like, I mean, first off, like, I will just say all my thoughts on the book are obviously like from the point of view of somebody who's like Lena's perfect and God and mother. So I don't know if I'm like an objective reviewer of the book, but I really liked it. I feel like some people I've been talking to are like mad that it's so like unreliable narrator, and I'm like, I guess that's valid, but it's like, well, that's why I like her. Like, I don't know. It's just like, I would hate a book where somebody's trying so hard to be accurate when what I'm really interested in is like a woman's inner world and how she sees the world, whether it's objectively right or wrong. It's such a juicy book. I mean, even like, I thought it was going to be more about like the 6 years of writing girls and like the more like minute or like the more specific things of like Twitter fights or like certain episodes that people like really had reactions to, but she doesn't really go into detail specifically like of like I was kind of like, oh, like maybe she'll talk about the Donald Glover of it all, or maybe she'll talk about like the American Bitch episode and like what inspired that and like really get into like season 6 and her reflection on that. With like the baby and everything. But none of that happened. It is like the title of the book does a good job of explaining what the book is about because it really is just mainly focused on like her experience with fame and like her being kind of at war with like the public, and then like her being so chronically sick constantly in a million different ways. It was crazy to hear like how intense, like it was years and years of like debilitating pain and issues and stuff. And then our girl is like, reveal, I also lit myself on fire. Like, as if it was cool to see like what in too much was so based on like Lena did that. Um and also just like I guess I didn't me and Evan didn't really know or weren't really paying that much attention to like Lena's whole pill addiction, like or like going to rehab, like getting sober. Like I remember her telling us like she doesn't drink anymore, but I didn't know it was like a whole thing. But overall, my favorite part of the book was definitely like how honest she was about her perspective on her friendship with Jenny Connor. And then also like the overarching thing she discusses in the book is Jack Antonoff. I'm really seeing the parallels between like the Jack Antonoff Lena Dunham relationship and like the Mr. Big Carrie relationship. Um but yeah, she doesn't, I think she doesn't really do like a smear campaign on either of these people, or even like as she's telling like her side of the story, she's never claiming that her side is the right side. Like she's not saying like, and you should believe me and take like my feelings into consideration. She's just kind of describing like exactly what she's going through in these things. And I'm sure like those two people have their own version and side of the story, and the truth is somewhere in the middle, as most things are, right? But it was ultimately, I'm like glad that she like got into the nitty gritty because it's like I actually hear her thoughts. Because by the way, that's like how we think. And I just am like, oh, like this is why we want to read this book, is because she's gonna like really say all her thoughts, whether they like are fair or not, or good or not. Um, what was surprising though is like how much it seems like she's like still not over Jack, or like she still thinks that the end of that relationship means something about her as a person and character. And I get that, like, maybe your first love, and like they were together 6 years. So, like, your first young, intense love, like, would have a lasting impact on you forever. But I'm surprised, like, well, she doesn't really mention her current husband at all. By choice, she like doesn't want to share that piece of her life with us. But because of that, it is like, wait, this whole book is about how obsessed you are with Jack Antonoff, which I would be too. My favorite band is and always will be Fun. Even listening to this audiobook, I'm like, damn, he broke her heart, but like he wrote Some Nights. So it's hard. I mean, give me a second. I need to get my story straight. Oh my god. I mean, that's literally what this book is about. It is cool to hear her reflect on things that happened over a decade now. Like, obviously, I think she did a really, I mean, she's just so good at writing because she was so good at kind of like writing specifically what something felt like in the moment, and then how she looks back on that memory and how maybe things have shifted, or like the way she sees it is different. But let's get into it. Let's go part by part. So, part one, she says, I'm not a girl. And what's so fun about this book is every single chapter is one of the titles of an episode of Girls, except for there was like one that I couldn't match. But, anyways, the first episode or the first chapter is I Get Ideas, which was season 2, episode 2. And this is just all about like how she got started and how like Girls came to be. And basically, like, she like had just graduated Oberlin. She made her first short film, I believe, creative nonfiction. And then she did kind of like a web series thing called Delusional Downtown Divas, where she was just talking about like being young in the city with her friends. And then from that kind of came the tiny furniture of it all. Well, apparently she was like, I felt crazy in my house and I wrote tiny furniture over a weekend. Now, I know people who are writing movies, they tend to take a year, not kind of just like on their laptop over the weekend, but go off. I mean, that's what's so fun about that film is you're watching it and you're like, okay, this is not a tight script. This is just what this life is like. But she talks about like looking back at her younger self and being like, it was all so simple. Like, she talks about the first time she went to South by, or not South by, Park City, Utah for, what's the name of the film festival that happens there? Sundance. She goes to Sundance with like Audrey Gelman, who of course is like the character Marty's inspired by. And also, if you remember the girl in like, I think it's season 1 or season 2, where they have the headband like in the middle of their forehead, that's played by the real Audrey Gelman. But she's just talking about like her and her friends are like, they're so excited. Everybody's so film broy. And they're like, oh my God, there's an open bar. And she's just like reflecting on like how raw her early creative instincts were, the hubris of a young artist that should never be beat out of them. I think she even says like that specific phrase of just like, she loves the way young people are so unafraid or like undeterred and kind of delusional, which kind of like reminds me of Tina Fey's Bossy Pants LOL classic. When she's like, I'm so glad I was so stupid, or I never would have done this. Or not stupid. She says, like, if I knew how crazy or intense this would be, or like how unlikely it would be, I wouldn't have done it. And I think like Lena feels the same way. Like, now that she knows everything she knows, she's like, well, I'm thankful younger me had no idea this was all coming because she would be scared. Um, but definitely like her talking about how she's always been very much into talking about her and like her personal experiences and her obsession with kind of observing the world around her and wanting to kind of like dissect all the people in her life and turn them into these like characters in the story of her. And so then chapter 2 and 3, it's like kind of talking about like pitching the show like the month after Tiny Furniture premiered at South by, which was like a smash hit, and like she was getting like all these emails, and she was like, I of course was like saying yes to everybody. They all seemed awesome, which I totally get. Like, you're so young, you make something, then all of a sudden all these people are like, we want to help you. You're like, okay, help me, yes. But not really being able to like have the wherewithal to be like, okay, they're using me, or like, why would I work with these people? So her talking about that was definitely like interesting. And I think like the way she describes getting girls is so like a child getting a TV show. And it's so funny because I think of like Broad City, and like Abby and Alana like made that show. They made 2 years of a web series, and then they like teamed up with Amy Poehler, and then they like pitched it, and they had this big plan, and they were just like, they were very much like, here's exactly what it would look like. Whereas this HBO was kind of like, so it should be about girls. And she's like, yeah. And they were like, can you put together a pitch? And she's like, it's vibes, which is amazing. Never been done before. Well, maybe it has. I just don't know about it. But it was very, it's weird to like follow. What I like about the memoir is like the timeline is blurry, or maybe I was just blurry on it listening. Maybe I should have been paying more attention, but it felt like time wasn't linear. And also, like, things that were 6 years were one chapter, and things that were 1 month were 3 chapters, or something like that. So, like, it's hard to kind of like get a sense of like the timeline. But essentially she goes into like, and we've talked about this before on the pod, so I don't need to like reiterate, but she talks about like starting the show, being this really young girl, and being like paired with this producer. And this is where we get into like the Jenny Connor of it all, which is so interesting because when we watched the show, we were watching like all these behind the scene videos of like her and Jenny and Judd on a couch being like, so this is how this episode went down. And it's like, you can tell like these people are like in a room together at night, like laughing, coming up with ideas, like really being co-creators together. Does co-creators work if it's just two, or if it's more than two? Whoa, doing a solo podcast, I'm literally like, I feel crazy right now. And I'm like out of breath. Am I talking really fast? Evan, can you come here? No, I'm excited I'm gonna watch Evan's solo up. I wonder if they'll watch this one. Anyways, I loved like her talking about like auditioning people. She did almost not even mention Zasha. She was just like, Zasha's awesome. And then for Allison Williams, she's like, she's literally good at braiding hair. She's such a professional. I love that queen. And then it's like, well, we get all the ins and outs of her and Jemima's relationship. And you know what was interesting is like how little we get of Judd. Like, he's so clearly a character, but she kind of doesn't like touch anything like personal between them beyond this kind of like, I really trusted him and he was really supportive. That's like kind of all we get. And then like on the other side of that, it's essentially 200 pages about Jenny Connor. Which I totally get. And what I like about it is like, I feel like a lot of people I've been talking to are listening to it and they're like, I'm on Jenny's side. And I like that Lena wrote it in a way that is so like, I'm not necessarily right. This is just what it felt like in my body. And like, you can come to your own conclusions. It also seems like she is still coming to her own conclusions about everything that happened. And I think like the older version of her is looking back on the younger version of her and being like, I understand the motives that were happening there and like why things turned out the way they did. I really would love to know like what Jenny's take on all of this is. I think we had asked Jenny Connor to be on the pod like early on, and I think she replied like, it's so cool that you guys are doing this, but guesting on something like this is just like not for me. And we were like clear that they had like their Lenny letter fallout, but like this is the first time we're really getting like details. And mainly the details are like Lena thinking about how obsessed and infatuated she was with this woman and how it ultimately ended sourly. Um, I really connected with this because I tend to like be very obsessed with like a woman who's a little older than me, who knows things I don't, and like really want to believe in them. I literally got scammed by a astrologer in Midtown this week because I she was just so trustworthy and like she seemed wise, and like I understand like Lena being like new to this and meeting Jenny and them hitting it off and then her becoming literally mommy. What was interesting about this book for me personally is like hearing how much Lena leans on, oh my god, leaning into Lena, leans on other people, and like it's very clear that like she's not the most independent person. And it seems like her relationship with her parents is like more she's more dependent on them. It feels like a little bit of a chaotic family, and just like a lot of like kind of enabling, which isn't good or bad necessarily, but as somebody who's like always been very hyper independent, the most interesting part of this book was seeing the ways she leans on people. It's just so like, you know, the person in your friend group who like is so ready to text their mom back or so ready to like ask for help. I just am like so scared of asking anyone for anything. So it's interesting to me to see or hear kind of the ways in which she was not self sufficient or used people for a sense of self. It was also interesting, like how obsessed, like how boy crazy she was, low key. As somebody who like does not care, I was like, oh my god, the way you're like thinking about these guys so much reminds me of like girls from summer camp. But thank God she's speaking on it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not mad. Okay, I literally don't know how to like sit for this. I'm not even looking at the camera because I'm too scared. I've just been looking at my notes. So, her early on, like meeting women in the industry, and when they were like mean or weird, she was like, no worries. Those women were too tired to remember feminism. I love that line. I also love when she talked about auditioning with Adam and Adam like bit her arm. The way, like, I don't think any of this could happen anymore. The way she's like, we improvised the sex scenes. And I'm like, well, I don't know if that should happen. Also, just like, Adam Driver seems like he is not for me. I just am like, that doesn't make me feel safe. I need to get out of there. But he was perfect for the role and his audition was amazing. It's crazy to watch. If you guys haven't seen it, go watch the audition on YouTube because Lena looks so little and you can just like see like her be like, oh my God, this guy's crazy. And he's so good at acting. Oh my God, I'm freaking out. Like it feels so like genuine. And she does go, we talk about this on the episode coming out on Tuesday, so I won't go too into it right now. But she's just so like infatuated with him. And he's like famously, what is it called? Tumultuous. But I love when Lena's like, so me and Judd were like, so this Adam should be the Adam. And then Judd just double checked with his wife, Leslie Mann, and she watched his self tape or whatever and was like, oh, of course. Love that. Also a line I literally wrote down because I liked it. She was forgetting my lines, forgetting my shot list, forgetting to be pretty, funny, smart, or good. And yeah, what I liked about like her description of being kind of the writer, director, star of Girls, and then like going through all this health stuff, it's like it's so clear that she wanted to be liked so well and still is. I mean, even me and Evan reflecting on like our interview with her, it was just so like clear that she was dead set on like being magic for us, and she was, and she did it. But it's like, yeah, she really want her explaining how much she wanted to people please and her inability to do that or failure to succeed at that was so devastating for her. I really connect with that. Um, but yeah, the idea that she was not only a child kind of doing this like adult thing that she didn't really have a lot of experience with, she was also a woman who felt all this pressure to be like pretty, funny, good. And then it's like this whole time we're at the like peak of Jezebel.com and BuzzFeed being like, fuck you, bitch. Which is awesome. Or they were being like feminist slay. Let's find a way to talk about her in a bad way. Um, Also the way like um everybody was like, you're so fat, she's starving herself, she has anorexia. And then like also they're like, and she's always having sex scenes on camera. I'm like, is she though? I mean, she has a fair amount, but I'm just like, maybe all the shows I've seen since have just really leaned into that. But I'm like, Bridgerton's messier than, okay, well, maybe not, but y'all know what I mean, where I'm just like, that's all anyone can remember. Like, that's their main takeaway. And like her going on SNL and then being like, all the sketches were basically about how I take my clothes off. I'm like, this is so like, it's so like when any woman does a press run and they keep getting asked the question of like, I mean, have you guys seen that supercut where Scarlett Johansson is being asked, like, did you wear like a skin tight suit? And she's like, yep. And they're like, did you have underwear on under that? And she's like, can we please? Why is everybody asking those? And it's like, yeah, what the hell is going on? Like, it is just so interesting. And especially, like, I think it's so interesting how many of the people she was describing doing this were older women. It just shows you kind of like where we're at as a society. No worries. Anyways, all the girl stuff kind of happens pretty quickly. It was shocking to hear like during season 6 she was going through like all her like early endometriosis stuff, and like a lot of family members were dying. Now we talk about the Adam Driver drama on the pod, but let's talk about her friendship with Nora Ephron. What the hell? And then Nora Ephron dying, Irish exiting on her, and her being like, I'm sorry I couldn't make it to lunch, but you don't have to die. Oh my god, I'm like literally out of breath, y'all. There was a line when she was talking about making girls and like how tired and like overworked and insane she felt. But she was like, I thought this was she was like, when I was that age, I thought this is the only recipe for my joy, which that hit hard because everybody I know is like, this success, the having this success will be the only way I'm ever happy in my life. Otherwise, like I'll be a failure and never be happy. But and then you realize like maybe that's not how life works. But maybe it is. You know what? I'll let you guys know when I find out. Um okay, and then we go into like part 2. I mean, part 1 was more about like her falling in love with Jack Antonoff for the first time and like how magical that was, and honestly was making me like smile in the street because she just like felt so excited. And it's like when a girl gets to like feel this like magical love with this guy she really likes, I think that's so sweet and beautiful. And Disney princess. Part 2 of the book is called Not Yet a Woman. I wonder how she came up with that. She starts this by talking about going to a business dinner with a man who actually just wanted to get her in her pants and she had to tuck and roll out of there, which is so, I'm picturing her doing the ladybird kind of thing where she just opens that car and really goes and has a cast. Then she did also talk about how she did shatter her elbow. There was a lot of situations of like her on set pushing through something she shouldn't have. Also, there is something to be said for like that much stress on the body or being so busy. Of course, like that can't be good for your body. Of course, like your immune system would freak out. Like that is, I feel like we'll look back in 100 years and be like, what the hell have we been doing this whole time? Like, or I don't know, the way IUDs get inserted into our bodies right now, we will look back and be like, what were they doing back then? That is so crazy. Or, anytime you learn about like Victorian era, like beauty stuff, anytime I learn about that stuff, I'm like, that's so crazy. The foot binding, I remember learning about foot binding in high school, being like, that's crazy. And then I think about like everything going on right now. And I'm like, we're going to look back and be like, so that was nuts. Like preventative Botox. You have to laugh. You have to laugh. Also, to think we didn't have sunscreen until recently freaks me out. Anyways, I'm going on a tangent. You know what? There's so much to still get into. I might have to do this in 2 parts because this is already like 30 minutes. I'm actually gonna end it here because I feel like I'm falling asleep and I'm not real. But let me know your thoughts on Famesick, what your take is. I do understand that like I love that girl so much. She could kind of get away with murder for me. But I know people who are a little bit more like hard on her. I would be interested to hear like what their perspective on the book is. And I will be back on Substack talking more about it. I'm probably gonna like do a couple things. It's just such a meaty book, and I feel like I'm still processing it because I just finished it 2 days ago. So I feel like I still have so many more thoughts to share. So I'll keep doing that on Substack. I'm so excited for this new thing. We've never done it before. We're still figuring it all out, but we're excited. We like met with a girl at Substack and she's been really cool, and we're really excited about like the community aspect and like getting to kind of like make this a space for fans to kind of like get to conversate. Basically, I want it to be like Reddit for cool girls, and really make it more like that. So let me know what you guys would want here. We're still in the early days, so we're open to like anything. If you absolutely hated this, you are valid, and I'm totally open to feedback. So you know what? Let me know. Anyways, check out the episode on Famesick next week, on the public main feed. And then Evan will be dropping their first solo up. I think they're going to be talking Roni or something in the Bravo verse. So that'll be good. And we're hoping to talk about stuff beyond girls and Broad City and Sex and the City and kind of just like go more general TV. So we'd love to know like what shows you are watching these days or what shows you think we need to be starting a discussion about. Okay, see you next time. Bye.